I gave my stepmom her Mother's Day gift and stayed close enough to see the change in her smile. When my dad married Cassandra, I was 11. Mom had been gone 14 months, ovarian cancer, that spread faster than anyone thought. One night she said she felt tired. And 83 days later, I was standing at the cemetery in a black coat that smelled like the store tags still on it. Dad waited exactly a year before introducing Cassandra. She worked at his firm in client accounts. Always polished hair, perfect makeup, steady heels, even on gravel. She makes me feel alive again, he told me softly, but with no room for argument. I tried. I carried her boxes into the room where Mom's photo albums had been. I smiled when she replaced the quilt Mom made with a sleek white bedspread. I nodded when the backyard roses were dug out for a fire pit for 3 years. I wore the clothes she chose, attended her charity lunches, and when I needed comfort, it was the dog who curled beside me, not her. The tipping point came in the spring of my sophomore year, when I earned the lead role in the regional debate finals, the first thing since Mom's funeral that made me feel like my own skin fit again. The championship night landed on the same date as Cassandra's foundation gala. She was chair this year. Tablescape themes and wine pairings had been discussed for months. She said it without looking up from her emails. Obviously, you'll need to skip the finals. The Goldmans are bringing their daughter. She's at Stanford Law. Networking. Emily. Dad opened his mouth to defend me for a breath, but stopped when Cassandra rested her hand on his wrist. It's just a school thing. There will be endless debates. You can go to another. My appetite for arguing vanished. I went to my room and pulled out the cedar box Mom left me inside. Was her engagement necklace tied with a ribbon, a dried daisy from her garden, and a thin envelope in her hand. I've chained. Never been brave enough to open it that night. I unfolded it, my eyes blurring by the third line. My dearest M, if you are reading this, it means I'm gone. There are things I didn't want to burden you with, but you need to know, in the back of this letter is a key to a safe deposit box. What is in there will answer questions you don't yet know to ask. Wedged in the fold was a small brass key stamped with the name of the local credit union. The next morning, I pretended to be at a library project and went straight to the bank. The branch manager's face softened instantly. Your mother told me one day you would arrive. She led me to a booth and set the box on the table. Inside was a slim hard drive, manila folders, and another handwritten letter. I know you wonder about Cassandra. The letter began. I have known about her far longer than you think, 6 months before my diagnosis. I learned about her and your father together through a private investigator. I opened the folders one by one. Photographs of Dad and Cassandra in hotel lobbies in cities where Dad was meant to be at board retreats. Expense reports listing jewelry, never unwrapped at our house, rental agreements for a furnished condo 40 minutes away. Text transcripts from his phone. I can't wait to stop hiding one from Dad. Read another from Cassandra, said she'll be gone soon. It wasn't just the affair. There were spreadsheets mapping the movement of money from my mother's family trust accounts into shell corporations registered overseas. Dad's signature appeared everywhere. Cassandra's on many too. The trust was 3 generations of careful building land investments, consulting ventures, a legacy meant for me. Then the gut punch, a folder marked medical. She had documented strange lab results from independent testing, elevated heavy metals in hair samples, whispers in doctor's notes about unusual patterns, she wrote. I cannot prove it in court, not yet, but every time Thomas cooked for me, something was wrong. This letter is so that you are protected. I have created a secondary trust in your name. The deed to our home and key company shares are already in it. The trustees will ensure your control when you turn 18. If you read this earlier, you can reach them now in the blue envelope. I held that box for hours until the confusion and grief I had carried hardened into precision. I didn't run. I didn't scream. Instead, I decided to become invisible in plain sight. For the next year, I agreed to every dress Cassandra chose, attended her networking brunches, smiled through her backhanded compliments. Dad thought his daughter was simply maturing. I was studying every conversation, memorizing names of clients, shell companies, offshore banks, building my own concurrent set of spreadsheets by night. 6 months after opening Mom's letter, I decided it was time to meet the names in the blue envelope Cass had left untouched in her greed. A forensic analyst, a corporate attorney, and a retired federal mediator who had been one of Mom's closest allies. I called each one under the cover of a weekend volunteering shift. My classmates thought I was tutoring middle schoolers in civics. Instead, I was sitting in a sunlit study, sipping tea while placing folders on a table. The accountant closed her laptop and rubbed her temples after 20 minutes of reviewing my data. The attorney's jaw tightened. The mediator just kept watching me over the rims of his glasses. Your mother would be both proud and furious that you've shouldered this, he said. What do you want to do? The attorney asked. I laid out my plan. I could blow it all up now. I could run and wait until 18, or I could play the long game the way Mom would. Precise, deliberate. I told them I wanted to understand how the company's veins carried money, where its heart was buried, and what legal teeth I could bear. When the moment was right, the mediator smiled faintly and said, She told us you'd choose patience. 3 nights a week, I disappeared into study groups that were, in truth, crash courses in the machinery of corporate finance. The accountant taught me to trace funds through layered transactions to tell forged invoices from real ones, taught me why the date on a contract can ruin an alibi. The attorney's afternoons with me were deep dives into partnership agreements, trust law, and the kinds of exit clauses Dad probably never imagined a teenager could wield. The mediator brought me into quiet lunches with people who remembered my mom from her early board days, regulators, investors, old family friends who had distanced themselves from Dad's tenure. One by one, they offered promises that when I reclaimed the chair, they would be there. Meanwhile, I kept playing. Model daughter, Cassandra paraded me through galas and industry dinners. I listened, smiled, asked strategic questions, and filed away every careless name she dropped after dessert. Dad never noticed that I surreptitiously photographed company documents left open on his desk at night. I filed each image into an encrypted drive mirrored on 2 devices hidden behind a false shelf. In my closet, I recorded snippets of conversations over dinner when Dad complained about a difficult old investor or a delicate transfer and spent my nights cross-referencing them with public records. The jigsaw began to take shape. By winter break, I'd traced 2/3 of the missing trust capital into 6 foreign accounts registered in island nations known for secrecy. I knew the names of their directors, all proxies for Cassandra's cousin, my own father's golf partner. The attorney examined my charts at our next meeting and said in a low voice, "This is enough to put them both away for a very long time," but I shook my head. If we went to war now, they would fight tear up the company's roots. Just to win, I wanted them contained, not just punished. In March of junior year, Dad announced I'd been accepted to a summer mentorship program in New York, sponsored by one of his old business school contacts. Cassandra gushed that it would prepare me for my future role in the family legacy. She had no idea that the contact she mentioned already despised her and had quietly briefed me months earlier on Dad's shadow ledgers. I was welcomed like a peer into rooms where real deals were struck not because of Dad, but because of Mom's name for 8 weeks. I absorbed more than any textbook could teach, sipping bitter office coffee while listening to traders speak in numbers like another language, returning home in August with a heavier suitcase and a sharper mind. The summer before senior year, Cassandra cornered me at brunch with what she clearly thought would be a grand gesture. She wanted to adopt me officially, a binding public claim to her as my legal mother. Before I spread my wings in college, I smiled like it moved me to tears inside. I saw the strategy immediately. An adopted daughter meant inheritance rights, bolstered control. If Dad ever faltered, I hugged her back and said I'd love nothing more. Later that night, in the mediator's quiet study, we turned the adoption into an opportunity. Family court filings required full financial declarations, hers and my father's. The accountant's eyes lit up. We'll get an updated map of every AC. Count you haven't already uncovered, the attorney assured me. The secondary trust remains untouchable. I walked home under the early autumn street lamps, feeling the weight of Mom's necklace against my collarbone. My fingers curled around the miniature brass key I still carried. My war was moving into its next phase. 2 weeks before Mother's Day, I began assembling the most meticulous school project I'd ever done, except it wasn't for school, and its grade would be measured in surrender, not applause. I worked after midnight, carefully selecting each page, a mix of photographs, annotated, transaction records, travel itineraries, and copies of the shell contracts they'd both signed. I bound the pages in leather embossed in gold script. A Daughter's Respect. This year's Mother's Day spectacle was a brunch for 50 intimates in the newly remodeled garden. Cassandra had leveled Mom's wild tulips to make room for geometric hedges and a fountain shaped like a swan. She was pacing her dressing room, flipping through hangers of champagne-colored silk when I knocked the Chanel, I said. When she asked my opinion, she took it without hesitation. "I have something for you," I added, handing her the box wrapped in cream paper and tied with a silver ribbon. She murmured, You shouldn't have her hand lingering as if measuring the weight. She hesitated before untying the bow. The first page was a photo of Mom at her desk, hair loose, smiling. Cassandra blinked once, twice, her expression stiffening as she turned the next page, then the next, confusion shading into dread. My handwriting guided her through each exhibit, off-books, partnerships listed under her cousin's name, side by side with her own wire approvals. Her voice thinned. This is ridiculous. Keep reading, I murmured, my tone mild but unyielding. By the time she reached the offshore accounts, her knuckles were pale around the binding. I mentioned casually that certain regulatory bodies had taken an interest in banking transparency. I added that metadata from her phone aligned neatly with wire timestamps. The meeting tomorrow morning with the trust board, I told her, was her chance to choose dignity over handcuffs. She knocked her mimosa glass over before hissing, "You have no idea what you're playing at." "Careful," I told her, "your guests are here. Wipe your mouth." I spent the brunch as her perfect shadow, laughing at jokes, toasting her mentorship, while watching her flinch with every toast that carried a double meaning. Dad arrived late, sunburned from golf. It gave me time to slip into his study and leave an identical book wrapped in the same cream paper with a neat black bow. That evening, when the guests were gone, Cassandra was in the bedroom half packing a suitcase. She froze when I told her the FBI and SEC were probably already interested in her travel plans. They weren't yet, but she didn't need to know that. "What do you want?" she said, her voice flat. "I want the company returned through the secondary trust. I want every siphoned cent restored. I'll let you stay on paper as a consultant so it doesn't look like exile." She let out a short, mirthless laugh. "You're 16. I'm nearly 17, I corrected. "And I've been training for this longer than you've been pretending to love my father." Dad's key turned the front door, then his voice calling her name. He stopped short when I offered the still-wrapped book. He set his golf bag down and opened it page by page. His lawyer's discipline kept his face still, but his knuckles tightened with each sheet. When he finished, he exhaled slowly. "You actually think all of it is documented," I interrupted, "including the medical records on Mom's treatment patterns, strong enough for an inquiry." His nostrils flared. The meeting with the trustees took less than an hour. Formulas were already drafted for a full handover. Dad signed each without comment. Power of attorney. Voting rights, resignation letters, everything. The mediator's steady voice explained the conditions. Any obstruction would trigger criminal complaints. Dad finally looked at me and said, "Your mother would be proud or furious. Maybe both." I said she wanted me prepared. By summer's end, Cassandra was removed from the org chart under the guise of transitioning to an advisory role. Dad retained a ceremonial title. Watched by the same trustees he'd once underestimated, the stolen funds began flowing back, dribble by dribble, through settlements and asset sales. The press release called it a generational shift, honoring my mother's vision. Justice felt less like a trumpet blast and more like the steady sealing of a vault door behind me. Last week, I stood at Mom's grave for the first time since reclaiming the company. I told her it's safe. You don't have to worry anymore. I laid white lilies on the stone and felt the breeze shift as I turned. Cassandra was leaving a single rose behind every year on Mother's Day. I send her a photo of Mom smiling. She never replies, but I know she gets it.